There was a time when the name Patricia Routledge made millions of people laugh without even trying. But behind all the love from fans for Hyacinth Bucket was a woman dealing with quiet struggles, private regrets, and a life that was much lonelier than the character who always wanted everything perfect around her. As the years went by, after the show ended, Patricia's life became more gentle, more fragile, and way more heartbreaking than fans ever thought. And in the last months of her life, she shared some truths that made her story feel even more emotional. The woman behind the character. When Keeping Up Appearances ended in 1995. Patricia Routledge stepped away from the cameras with the same grace and self-control that marked her whole career. People thought she just went on to new acting jobs, but the real story was more complex. At 66 years old, Patricia was already quietly dealing with the fact that her most famous character had become both her biggest success and her biggest weight. In a later interview, she said that people couldn't really see past Keeping Up Appearances, and that she figured out early she might be remembered not as the serious actress she had trained her whole life to be, but as the quirky, snobby, unforgettable Hyacinth Bucket. But she also knew how much the character touched people's lives. Shortly before she passed away, she remembered getting a letter from a woman who had fallen into total sadness, thinking her life was over. One night, she turned on the TV and watched Patricia's acting. "You helped me get through a really tough time," the woman wrote. That letter meant a lot to Patricia for years, showing her that her work really helped people who needed it. Still, being famous came with a personal price. In her own thoughts later, Patricia admitted that she never chose on purpose to stay single or without kids. It just happened because kiting took over everything. My love for acting was so complete, she said. Her two big romances ended in heartbreak, including one with a married man that made her feel guilty for years. She said she felt deep down that there had to be some loss. By the early 2000s, Patricia started pulling back from the spotlight. While fans thought she was just enjoying retirement, she was quietly facing the feelings from a whole life spent on stages and in front of cameras. The cheering had stopped, and a quieter, lonelier time had started, leading to choices that shaped the rest of her days, leaving Hyacinth behind, but never fully getting away from her. Even as Patricia Routledge tried to move on, the shadow of Hyacinth Bucket followed her everywhere. By the late 1990s, she was set on proving she was a serious actress again, reminding everyone, and maybe herself, that she was more than one role. She took the part of Hetty Wainthropp in Hetty Wainthropp Investigates from 1996 to 1998. That was very different from the snobby social climber she had just played. Hetty was real, smart, and truly human, and Patricia's acting got praise once more. But even with that success, people kept asking about Hyacinth, saying her lines, copying the famous "It's Bouquet," and seeing her as the character instead of the real woman she was. This slow understanding is what finally made her leave TV for good. In a BBC4 documentary years later, Patricia said she decided to stop keeping up appearances because she felt the stories were starting to repeat old ideas. She also talked about a key lesson from Ronnie Barker. Leave when people still want more, not when they're sick of you. Patricia was 77 when she made that decision, and though the BBC was upset, she thought it was the only proper way to end that part of her life. But away from the cameras, her days were getting quieter than anyone thought. Their actors looked for new work. Patricia turned back to the theater world she had always loved. She acted in talking heads in Shakespeare plays, and stuck with the art that first shaped her back in the 1950s. But even in those shows, she noticed something upsetting. People came not for her deep acting roles, but because they wanted to see Hyacinth Bucket in real life. This surprise legacy bothered her a lot. Patricia knew it was special to be so loved, but she couldn't ignore the quiet sadness of being tied forever to one role after working so hard her whole life on stage and screen. She often said the love was wonderful, but losing her own identity was real and got harder as she got older. A quiet life in Chichester, loneliness behind the fame. By the early 2000s, Patricia Routledge's fame was still huge, but her everyday life got surprisingly calm. In 2000, she moved for good to Chichester, a small, peaceful town far from the busy life of London and show business. It was on purpose. She wanted calm after years of non-stop work. For fans who loved her, it was hard to picture the woman who ruled British comedy living almost unknown. But for Patricia, this quiet gave her something she never really had before, her own space. But quiet didn't always mean happy. As time went on, Patricia never got married and had no kids, and that started to feel heavier as she reached her 80s and 90s. In interviews, she made clear she never planned a life without family. She just got so caught up in acting that time passed quicker than she thought. The two big loves from her younger days were long over, including one with a married man that left her feeling guilty for a long time. "I told myself it was okay for now," she once said, "but his marriage wasn't real anymore." Those personal stories showed a loneliness that fans never saw behind her funny acting. In Chichester, Patricia found friends at the cathedral where she went to church when she could. She called the building part of our history, something she felt she should help protect. On her 90th birthday, she even helped collect money to fix the cathedral's roof, a simple act from a woman famous worldwide, but living calmly with locals who gave her privacy. When she became a patron later, she said she didn't want to just be a name on paper, but really help out, showing her strong work ethic and her need for meaning. As she got less mobile, Patricia moved to the Wellington Grange care home in her last years. People there noticed her grace, her kindness, and how she hardly talked about her career unless asked. She grew older with style, but her life got smaller bit by bit. While everyone still loved Hyacinth Bucket, Patricia spent her last 10 years mostly away from view, a respected star who still lived her final days in a calm kind of alone time that not many knew about. Awards, honest talks, and the weight of a lifetime. Even as her daily life got quieter, Patricia Routledge's story kept getting celebrated in public. In 2017, she became Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, one of the top honors in the country. When the letter came, Patricia later said she felt both laughs and tears, amazed that years of hard work led to that. She got the title not just for her acting on stage and screen, but also for her charity and support for the arts. Even as she aged, she said the arts need to be protected, grown, and open to all. But behind these big awards were quiet truths she shared only later. In the Channel 5 documentary Keeping Up Appearances, 30 Years of Laughs, filmed months before she died, Patricia opened up in a very real way. She said that while everyone loved Hyacinth Bucket, the role was like a sword with two edges. Some fans couldn't see beyond the character. Others acted like she was Hyacinth. She was thankful for the love, but she also felt stuck between who she really was and the made-up person who took over her career. In the same documentary, Patricia told a story that touched people a lot. She remembered a letter from a woman who felt like her world had ended. But after making tea and turning on the TV, she found comfort in keeping up appearances. She wrote to Patricia, "It helped me get through a very difficult time." That story stuck with Patricia for years, showing her that comedy can help heal in ways actors don't often see. She also explained why she ended the show even though it was so popular worldwide. She felt the stories were starting to repeat, and she remembered advice from comedian Ronnie Barker. Leave while people still want more, not when they're glad it's done. Stopping the show at its best was her last gift to fans, a choice from true care for her art, not because she was tired. These thoughts, soft, honest, and a bit sad, showed the feelings Patricia had carried for years. Even while being honored, she was quietly coming to terms with her life. Loved, successful, but changed a lot by the choices she made for her acting. The last part, a slower life, and one final public time. In her final years, Patricia Routledge's days got smaller, but her mind stayed clear and her drive stayed strong. Even in her mid-90s, she kept helping the arts and going to some events when her health let her. One of her last times in public was in 2024 at a Shakespeare event for 400 years, since the first folio. With other big names in British theatre like Dame Judi Dench, Vanessa Redgrave, Joanna Lumley, Patricia at 94 came in a wheelchair but still had that strong presence. Dressed in a bright blue suit, she sat proudly next to Dame Penelope Keith. Both women stood for a generation of actors who helped shape today's British theatre. At the event, Patricia talked about how Shakespeare's works shaped her acting. She said they taught her control of feelings, deep characters, and the truth. needed to be a real actor. People there remembered how she listened closely to the readings, especially when Dame Judi Dench read Shakespeare's sonnets. It was a night full of respect, old memories, and calm grace. A sign that even though Patricia had stopped acting, the theater was still in her heart. But behind the cheers, her health was getting worse. Living at Wellington Grange Care Home, she needed help to move and often rested. Staff said she was kind, private, and always polite, thanking people who helped her. She hardly mentioned her TV fame unless asked. Her close friends said she stayed thoughtful, often thinking back to her young days, her early theater work, and the big choices in her life, especially giving up personal joy for her career. It was around this time that she started sharing more open thoughts about feeling alone, her legacy, and getting older. She said she sometimes thought about what her life would have been if she had married or had kids. But she never sounded angry, just okay with it, even peaceful. Life just happened that way, she once said, because my love for acting was so complete. By mid-2025, she went out less. She still got letters from fans all over, but she didn't have the energy to write back herself. A lifetime of hard work, control, and strong feelings had finally worn her down. Her days had slowed to a calm pace, thoughtful, and quietly getting ready for the end. She seemed to accept it with amazing calm, her peaceful death and the sadness the world felt. On October 3, 2025, the news came that Dame Patricia Routledge had died peacefully in her sleep at 96. Her agent said she was surrounded by love, a nice thought for fans who worried she was totally alone at the end. Soon, people from everywhere sent tributes. It showed that even after 30 years, Hyacinth Bucket and the woman who played her still meant a lot to millions. But no, too many knew how emotional her last months were, and how much she thought about the odd, wonderful, and sometimes painful story she would leave. In her last TV interview that year, Patricia shared her heart more than ever. She said keeping up appearances had kept people from seeing the real her. But she also thanked the many letters from fans whose lives got better because of her comedy. It was in this interview that she told her most touching story. The letter from an older woman who thought her life was over but found hope again in Hyacinth's funny ways. Patricia said softly, "It makes it all thoroughly worthwhile." Those words stayed with people because they showed the deep truth that the laughs she gave the world were her way of helping others. When the news of her death came out, fans didn't just say sorry politely, they really grieved. Many shared stories of watching Keeping Up appearances with parents or grandparents who had passed. Others shared Hyacinth's best lines, saying things like, "She has kicked the bouquet," or, "Rest well, Dame Patricia. Candlelight supper awaits." Some just wrote, "Thank you for saving me during a dark time." Everyone felt the same. She had touched lives in ways she never knew fully. Even after death, Patricia's humble side showed. She left no kids, no husband, no big last words, just a career full of honesty, and a legacy held by millions who loved her. Her life had quiet choices she gave up, private heartbreak, and always professional. And yet her last time was very peaceful. After years of bringing laughter to the world, she passed gently, leaving a quiet full of thanks instead of sadness. Dame Patricia Routledge spent her days giving joy to others, even while dealing with struggles the world hardly saw. Her death ended an era, but her work, her voice, and her unforgettable Hyacinth Bucket will keep comforting people for years to come. Which of Patricia's roles means the most to you? Share in the comments below. And if you want more stories about famous stars, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit notifications for our next one.